Good morning, brand DIYers. It is a sunny, beautiful Monday morning here in Victoria. And I thought I would start the week off with the 7 commandments. I know if you want to make yourself stand out, you change up the conventional a little bit. It's not the 10 commandments, it's the 7 commandments. It is the 7 commandments of brand management, but that's just a fancy word for doing the right things to make sure that your brand stays healthy and doesn't start getting weird and unpopular, which all of us, I think you can agree, want. So these are the 7 rules that I believe are fundamental to making sure that your brand stays healthy, vital, dynamic, and growing. And full props to Marc Ritson. I will mention him in the show notes. He is a great writer on everything brand related, and he inspired these 7 things. I mean, these are things that all of us brand builders know about, but it took Mr. Ritson to put them down on paper so that all of us could go, oh yeah, that totally makes sense. So here, kudos to Marc Ritson, the 7 commandments of brand management. Commandment number 1, remember your roots. Brands have origins, just like you do, just like I do. We have family, we have ancestry, we come from somewhere. And that coming from somewhere is the foundation that we build on. Now, too often, brands forget their roots. They forget why they were invented in the first place. They forget their purpose. Now, if you want to see a little bit more on purpose and crafting your purpose, check out my video from last week on creating an awesome brand purpose. In essence, a brand purpose is what role was your brand created to fill? Who are you serving? Why do you exist? That is your brand purpose. And that is a very powerful piece of information to have. And all too often, brands walk away from that. How come? Because oftentimes the brand stewards get bored, or brand managers say, you know what, that was then, this is now, we got to evolve. What happens though if a person forgets their roots? If one day they are steady Eddie and the next day they're crazy wild adventure person, oftentimes what we think about that person isn't, oh, this is great, they're completely different. We go, oh, this is worrying, they're completely different. Maybe they're having an aneurysm. People think about brands the same way. If your brand begins to behave out of character, people don't think that that's wonderful. They think, uh-oh, something's going wrong here. Maybe sales are tanking. Maybe they're grasping at straws. Maybe this is the last hurrah and they're just trying anything to survive. Not good. Commandment number 2, walk the talk. Too often, brand purpose, which we just talked about, becomes nothing more than words hanging on the lobby. So this is especially true when brands have exchanged hands from the person who came up with the brand in the first place, the founder, to a manager or a steward, or when a brand is merged with another brand. And everybody kind of forgets why the brand was invented in the first place. So they have these posters hanging up on the wall, but they don't really mean anything anymore. Now, a great example of this was Chiat Day's disruption methodology. Chiat Day, fantastic agency, especially the Chiat Day out of Los Angeles, where it all started, or Venice Beach, where it all started. This is an agency that disrupted entire categories with work for clients like Apple. But what they ended up doing is taking that disruption and codifying it and turning it into a methodology. And it went from being something in their DNA to just words up on the wall, or in this case, they became words that they would send out to clients and say, we can do disruption, TM, patent pending for you. The truth is, the people who were saying this a lot of the times, and I experienced this, they didn't feel like disruption. They were just bag carriers. They weren't disruptive people. So they had this sort of thing, and it became sort of an element to their pitch for them, but they didn't really mean it. And that is when the brand dies. that doesn't mean that you can't play with the DNA. So let me give you an example of how DNA can go wrong. When my agency, Palmer Jarvis, was bought by DDB, a big, very, very famous ad agency that in its heyday was run by a gentleman named Bill Bernbach, who created the Volkswagen campaign and a bunch of other campaigns. Super famous, big rule breaker. So the DNA of breaking the rules was always in DDB. But when DDB bought our agency, Bill Bernbach had been dead for 20 years. So as part of this purchase, I moved to another DDB agency that needed some help. And my job was to give them our startup agency religion, because that's why big agencies buy startups. They're like vampires. They want to suck the blood of something new and fresh and hopefully bring some of the youth and vitality of the startup into the old tired system. Am I cynical? No, not at all. Anyways, when I went to this agency, this DDB agency, what I saw, first impression, everywhere in the agency were little cards like in museum hanging next to paintings with Bill Bernbach quotes on them. Now, Bill Bernbach had some good quotes. No taking away from that. He was an innovative person. But did I mention he had been dead for 20 years? His culture of trying new things had been calcified, mummified, stopped dead in time. I'm certain that Bill Bernbach himself, had he been alive, would not have approved of turning his wisdom, his DNA, into code. He would have wanted us to play with that code, to hybridize it, to push it and pull it and try it in new ways. That was the spirit of disruption that he had intended in the first place. So yeah, if you have a DNA code, that's great. It's your job to play with the code while not actually throwing the code out, but definitely play with it. Let's talk a little bit about playing. Playing isn't just something nice to do if you're bored. Playing is actually what you have to do if you want to move forward. You need to change to stay consistent. If something made your brand famous, every ounce of your being probably just wants to hit repeat, 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 repeat. You probably just want to go back to that thing that made you famous in the first place and just do it over and over again. This becomes more and more powerful the more you have to lose. When you're established and you have a lot of people on the payroll, your tendency is to want to hit repeat and just reformulate the same thing that worked in the past. You're missing the point. The thing that made you famous in the past was doing something new. That's why your brand became established in the first place, because people looked at it and went, oh, this is something new. I'm going to throw away my old thing and get this new thing. It is the death of what made you great in the first place to want to repeat your success formula over and over again. Now, Apple may not reflect that death because they're doing better than they ever have. However, think of Apple after Steve Jobs. Name one great innovation to come out of Apple after Steve Jobs. It has become a culture of iteration that is taking the iPad, the iPhone, and the Mac and just doing tweak, 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 tweak. That is hit repeat, 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 and hope for something different. Now, if you know what Steve Jobs was looking for before he died, he was about to disrupt education. And I can tell you that that would not have looked like a 3-camera iPhone. It would have looked like turning the world of education on its head, something we could have definitely used a year ago when COVID shut down all the schools. 5th commandment, you will not get fired for trying to please everyone, but you won't get promoted either, and it could kill your brand. A Coke executive famously said that Coke was the right drink for everybody who had a mouth. Now, you can't do that. You need to be bloody minded about being the favorite movie. That is the movie that a certain person wants to see again and again and again and again. You want to be bloody minded about being the favorite movie for a very select audience. And if the rest of the world doesn't like that movie that you made, screw them. You don't get to be famous by creating Adam Sandler movies. You get to be famous by creating Citizen Kane or Jim Jarmusch movies or David Lynch movies. Movies that are weird, that only appeal to a select audience, and then that audience is so crazy about them that it infects other people. Harley Davidson did not become famous by trying to appeal to Japanese bike fans, or scooter riders, or BMW riders. Apple didn't go after accountants. Louis Vuitton did not start off by creating a bargain brand so everybody could carry a Louis Vuitton handbag. Sixth commandment: nobody cares about a marketer. They care about founders. Don't confuse your message with the message from the artist who came up with the brand or product in the first place. Marketing is, by definition, getting paid to put somebody else's message out there. It will never, ever be as powerful as a message from the person themselves. And that is why we are seeing such an incredible revolution in marketing, as founders are able to take to the airwaves and make their own videos and put their own message out there and create that one-to-one sense of connection with their tribe. You look at people like Tara Bosch at Smart Suites. She is a one-woman marketing machine on Instagram, and it is her who is reaching out to the audience. Compare that with Nestle or FM Mars or Cadbury, other candy makers. You don't have the CEO reaching out directly to the audience because the CEO isn't the person who invented this stuff. And so you have these brands that have marketing messages that are never as powerful as the person. Can you imagine if the person who invented the Snickers bar was actually out there? Or somebody who invented 7-Up was actually out there putting the message out? That would be pretty cool. It doesn't happen. Now, final commandment. It is all about the pink Chanel handbag. It is all about creating something exclusive first. Let me tell you the story of the pink Chanel handbag. Chanel used to famously create an insane looking, insanely expensive item for the runway shows. For example, the pink handbag. People who saw this handbag, it was insanely priced, probably $20,000 for a handbag, thought, wow, that's crazy, and to boot, it's way out of my league financially. However, I could probably afford it in black for $5,000. $5,000 being a pretty darn serious price for a handbag too. But you see something super exclusive, and that makes something that's a little more mass market much more appealing. If you are building a brand, you can always build the top tier, the exclusive, the unattainable by the few people except who can afford it or who are crazy artists. You build that first. You cannot build an exclusive brand if you start down market and try to work your way up. You can start up market and work your way down. So remember, the pink Chanel handbag, you start with a $20,000 crazy item, and that then appeals to the mainstream who will pay a little bit less for something a little more conservative that they can carry around every day. However, you cannot start with a shopping bag and try to migrate up to a $5,000 handbag. So there you go. The 7 commandments of brand management as inspired by Mark Ritson, who I will name in the show notes so you can check out his story. Great things to remember. Stay tuned tomorrow. We have a special guest on who is going to be running the first ever workshop on brand DIY. So as opposed to an interview format, we're going to have that person actually running a workshop. All right, stay tuned. I hope you have a great day. Let's go out and build some great brands. See ya.